In this Caring for Caregivers conversation, I'm talking with some of our Spokane volunteers about the need for more support to help family caregivers and how using the power of the vote is a tool for positive change. Debby Ryan, Steve Corker, and Aruna Bhuta are longtime Spokane residents, and they have many years of volunteering and advocating for change in their community. I sat down with Aruna, Steve, and Debby to get their ideas on preserving and improving our long-term care system, how programs like Social Security and Washington's long-term care benefit make a difference, and why they find volunteering and voting vital to making life better for everyone. Thanks very much. We're here in Spokane, and so lovely to be able to have a conversation with three of our favorite volunteers. And so I'm wondering if we could sort of go down the line and if each of you would tell us a little bit about your background and also tell us how long you've been in the greater Spokane area. Steve, you want to start? Introduce yourself.
I moved to Spokane in 1970, so I've been here a long time. And my background is that I taught at Gonzaga University for 36 years. I came out of the advertising industry and taught classes while I was actually in the business. I served on the Spokane City Council, so I come from a background of public service. And that's one of the things that drew me to AARP. It's continuing to be mindful of the community and its needs and trying to help in any way I possibly can. I'm happily married to a wonderful woman, and I have 6 grandchildren that are just making my day, day by day.
I'm Debby, and I've been in Spokane since 1979, a long time also. I raised my boys here, and I have 3 grandchildren. One son lives in Albuquerque, one son lives here. I spent my career in public health with the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children Supplemental Food Program. I did that for 29 years, and when I retired, I wanted to contribute to my community, and AARP is just fitting the bill for me to do lots of outreach and community service.
So glad that you're a volunteer. So glad that all of you are volunteers. Aruna?
My name is Aruna. I've been in Spokane since 1983. I have worked with families with special healthcare needs, children with special healthcare needs for 20 plus years. My background is in microbiology, but I got into clinical social work working with the families. And after retiring, I got on with working with Area Agency on Aging and its advisory council. And I've kind of felt like volunteering gives me back more than what I give. It just enriches your life experiences. And I'm just trying to, and also gives you an opportunity to learn new things and make new connections. So
I'm just going to say, after listening to the three of you, I think that retirement is a misnomer because there's no real such thing as retirement, right?
No, it's not.
So today I really want us to have a conversation about voting, the importance of voting, and talking about the issues that older adults really care about, which include caregiving and Social Security, of course. But I was wondering if each of you would share a little bit about, do you remember the first time that you voted, and what was that experience like? Any of you can start.
You know, I voted as soon as I became eligible. And I was in college at the time when I turned 18. And I can remember my parents, that they would dress up and take us down to vote. And we'd go into the ballot box. And they would we'd go to dinner afterwards. And my dad gave the same talk for the 18 years I was at home about the sacrifice that people made for the privilege of voting. And I never forgot that. And I have voted in every election since that 18th birthday because I never forgot that message of the sacrifice that men and women made for the right to vote.
That's amazing.
It's sacred.
I was in Southern California, and I turned 21, and there were local elections that I voted in, but the first presidential election was in 1974, and I felt so privileged to be able to vote for President of the United States for the first time. So it was exciting because you used to go someplace to vote. It wasn't a mail-in, and it was special to go somewhere and vote.
I voted for the first time in 1986 after we got the citizenship. And I was very fortunate that an elder friend of ours was a member of League of Women Voters, and she wanted to make sure that as soon as we got our citizenship, that we had finished our voter registration piece, because that's a really important, step that we need to, and then to understand the process as to how the system works, the local elections, the state level election, and then the federal election. So it was quite a learning process, and I have continued the journey about learning as to how systems work differently, being from India, just kind of wanting to learn that piece. And it has been a privilege to be able to participate in the democracy so that your voices are heard and your opinions are considered. Every vote counts. We had election in Spokane where there was just a difference of few votes, and that's a time most recently, I think in the last 2 years.
Both of you said privilege.
Right.
And it is a privilege. That's so important.
Right.
Thank you for saying that.
Sure, because I kind of feel like every vote counts, because I think we had one election where there was a difference of just one vote.
Oh, yes.
And that determined as to who will be part of, our city council. So we need to, every person's opinion counts, and we need to exercise our right to make a difference in having working democracy.
For seniors, it's critically important because we're the largest voting bloc.
Yes.
And we, I think, have the experience to recognize the needs of the country and have a wisdom. My wife is from China, and they revere senior citizens as pillars of our society and the people whose experience enlightens them. And I think the seniors with that experience in life appreciate the challenges and are the best mindset to make a vote.
So right now we're in a time where there's a lot of disenchantment with what's happening. So what would you say to folks who are thinking about, well, maybe I don't need to participate? Why is it important for them to learn about voting and to making sure that their voices are heard?
Well, we've talked about every vote counts, and every vote does count. And it's important to exercise your privilege of getting to vote and shape the way our city, county, state, and country is going. Is it going the way you want it to go? If it's not, you need to make sure you vote and encourage other people to vote so that we can have a positive outlook.
It gives you the right to be a critic of government. As an elected official, I can tell you that oftentimes I'd get into long discussions and I would say, are you a registered voter? And I said, you really lost your right to be in this room and criticize me. I said it facetiously, but listen, but when you participate in the process, you have earned the right to be a critic. Yes. and the responsibility to be a constructive solution to some of the problems we have.
I know, Steve, in particular, I know a lot of folks turn to you for advice around where do they find information. So let me just ask you all, when folks come to you about asking who they should vote for or on topics, what do you recommend to them?
I look at the information that I get in the newspaper about different candidates who are running for different positions, what their opinions are about the issues that are being faced, say, at the city level, county level, and also at the state and federal level. So main thing is, if possible, be involved in the questions that are being asked at the town halls to the candidates who are running for election, and get the answers so you know where they stand. And then you can make an informed decision as to, who to support with your vote.
For me, I'm cautious about where I get my information from, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so one of the things that I heavily rely on is the voters pamphlet that they send every registered voter. All the initiatives, the propositions, and the candidates are all in there. And if I see somebody I like, I can look them up and see what their voting record is on issues that are important to me.
I think the advice I give is to read and be as informed as you possibly can. Sometimes I try to identify particular leanings and point them to resources that help them make a better decision. And the other times when I'm an advocate, for instance, with the initiative that we're talking about and been a part of 2124, which has to do with long-term care, as an advocate, I try to be respectful of my audience and recognize that people are going to agree and disagree. But normally, if somebody comes up and asks me, I try to identify some of their leanings and identify resources that I think they would feel comfortable in seeking.
So that was sort of like a perfect segue to the question about how does your role or experience with caregiving, or whether you've been a recipient, or whether you have cared for your loved ones, whether they're adults like your parents or your children, how does that influence your voting decisions? Or how does that play out when you are looking at candidates?
I look at the candidates' positions as to how they have voted, like on Older American Act, which supports our senior nutrition program, family caregiver support program, and a few other programs, and how our congressional and Senate representatives in Washington, D.C., how have they voted on those positions? Because quite often those programs are not renewed in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. And like at the state level, we have Senior Citizens Act and a CSA, and again, see as to where our state representatives and senators have been, and understand as to what their priorities are. And sometimes if we have too many candidates running, then if they need to be educated, then work on kind of sharing with them importance of the caregiving and the burdens sometimes it can be on the caregivers, and how can that journey of caregiving be mutually satisfying, so that the person receiving the care is satisfied and person giving care has necessary supports.
Mm-hmm.
I know in my family, I live far away from my family, but my father had surgery in Southern California, and I took family leave for 3 weeks to change his bandage and help him. And when my stepfather got ill, he had Alzheimer's, my stepsister quit her job in Oregon, moved down to Mojave Desert to care for him for about 6 months. And she got paid through his salary. And then when he died, we gave her some money for her time, because she disrupted her whole life because he needed hands-on care.
I seem to be living with the issue of long-term care. My wife's ex-husband, we've had to take care of him. And both my parents were part of the responsibility dealing with some serious illness. And being 83 years of age, there are so many of my friends and neighbors that are dealing with it. And unfortunately, most people are not prepared to meet the financial obligations and the burden that falls on the caregivers and the family members is sometimes just horrific. And but you asked the question about how I deal with elected officials on issues like this. I never make an assumption, because I think the most responsible elected officials can agree to agree and agree to disagree. And it's if you put them in a certain category, you lose a lot of opportunity, because there are, regardless of political affiliation, personal experiences. I work in the housing industry. And if someone is a landlord or if somebody owns property, even if they're Republican or Democrat, they know the issues that are involved. So I in working with elected officials, I just find it's very important to get to know them, establish a rapport, and find out where their priorities are, their interests are, and work with the people that can advance the causes you believe in.
Well, AARP is a nonpartisan organization, and one of the things that we say about caregiving is that really it's an issue. This is not a party issue. This is an issue that, in fact, affects all of us. And it's not just about candidates, because clearly there are also ballot initiatives.
Yeah, and the initiative 2124 that is being considered for ballot in November of 2024 is the one that we need to put focus on, because our legislators have passed the Washington CARES Act, WACARES Act, where there is a payroll tax of 58 cents for every $100 that person earns. And that is a saving that person is putting aside, that in case if they need help after 3 years of contributing toward this program, that they can access it. And quite often we think that, I'm not going to need any help, or maybe in 70s and 80s I may need help. But it could be an auto accident, it could be a sporting accident, and even a person in 30s or 40s may have challenges that may require long-term care.
People need to remember the benefits of Social Security. Mm-hmm. We're living longer, and Social Security has an added burden of long care issues. And I think people, if they can just remember how important Social Security has been to seniors, they have to think about how beneficial is the issue of long-term care.
Right.
And it's kind of an extension of Social Security.
Absolutely.
In a way. And this state has seen to, the system may not be perfect, but they've identified the need and they're attempting to attack the problem. I hope someday that Social Security will include these issues that have to do with it. And I think that's the evolution that has to happen.
Yeah. Critical.
Yeah, it's important to remember that it is a benefit that you are investing in, and WACARES will move with you. So if you leave the state, people change jobs, things happen. It goes with you so that you don't lose the money that you've invested.
Social Security works because it's mandatory,
right,
in most cases. And for this program to work, it needs to be mandatory too.
Yes.
It just won't, the math doesn't work out. That's why I think it's critical.
And the other advantage of Washington CARES is that it doesn't preclude people who have pre-existing conditions. If you try to get the long-term care insurance through private plans, then if you have diabetes or diagnosis of cancer or multiple sclerosis or many of those chronic conditions, then you are not able to get long-term care. Also, women have to pay at a higher rate than men because women live longer. And also, you need to continue to pay into your long-term care insurance private, if you have a private insurance, even after retirement, whereas Washington CARES is just while you are working. And there is no discrimination basis on racial, gender, or any economic disadvantages, because quite often people who are in a higher economic stress can make their own plans, and people become eligible on Medicaid. But middle class people who don't have that benefit, they are the ones who fall through the cracks, and they don't have enough saving to be able to sustain the long-term care needs. And the amount that is available is going to be indexed for inflation, and it is not 100% it's going to cover everything, but at least it gets the family started on their journey, till they can find out what do they do next.
Also, with WA Cares, it's a benefit that you put into. There's no premium to go up and up and up as the private industry determines.
That's right. That's right. Here in short, I think what we are saying at AARP is that 2124 hurts women and hurts working families because it takes away a benefit and it increases costs for individuals. And so really appreciate the support and the advocacy that you all are doing for this issue.
And the other thing I would like to point out is private insurance, the health insurance that everyone has through their employers, doesn't pay for your long-term care needs in your own home. Mm-hmm. Neither does Medicare. And that quite often people think like, if I need it, Medicare will cover it. Oh, no, my insurance would cover it. But neither one of them cover. And to be eligible for Medicaid, you have to really spend down all your assets to $2,000 in savings account, your house and car, before you would become eligible for Medicaid in-home supports. So this program provides for, in case if your family member is giving the care to you, then you can pay your family member, or if you need some adaptive devices, or if you need to do home modification, then you can have the supports through this program as long as it is within the amount that's available to the individual.
I think this is why it's so important that we make sure that people know what's on the ballot, how to vote, right? And then that they do vote. Can you talk a little bit, because we certainly are talking about a state issue, but it's important that people vote because it's not only what's happening at the most national level, but also what's happening at the most local level, right? And in the greater Spokane area, I presume that you've got some hot topics that older adults care about that it's important to keep in mind as they look at their ballots.
We're dealing with homelessness and a housing crisis. And the issues are not only the issue of conduct that relates to the homeless, but the issue of affordability. 80% of the renters are not in a position to buy a home. They can't walk in the bank and make that happen. And more and more seniors are facing the increased costs of affordable housing. And I think that is probably the most serious. The second is probably public safety. Those challenges, we can deal with them. Mm-hmm. I have enough faith in the young people that are coming up. They'll do a better job than we did. But right now, a lot of seniors are scared.
The ballots at the local level really matter. It's not, because whether you vote for president or not, it's not the president who's deciding what Greater Spokane is going to be.
Local issues, in some ways, are even almost more important. Because there are issues that you have the right and ability to impact over others. And I keep telling people, don't forget about what's going on in the country, but think local.
Right.
Because this is where 90% of your life is.
And think about the state, too, right?
Yeah.
Because
it goes up the ladder. It just goes up the ladder.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, as Steve was mentioning, city council, your county, because we are also facing the issue of the fire retardant chemicals and contamination of our water supply. That is a significant public health issue.
Yep.
And, that needs to be addressed at the county level. And because otherwise it's going to affect the future generations significantly. Second thing is the wildfires, the climate change issues, and what decisions are made at the state level, especially the another initiative on Climate Commitment Act is going to be important, because as long as we kind of make sure that our state is safe so that we can prevent wildfires and have a safe air to breathe, that is also equally important at the local level.
We have one of the most active chapters, I think, in the country here in Spokane, Washington. And we have monthly meetings, so we try to educate people on those issues. And we bring in the people that can talk about fire dangers, and it's an opportunity to get education, to find the empowerment of the group, and to become a voice in our community. And I'm very proud of what we've done in Spokane to raise consciousness. We've had programs on fraud awareness and getting out the vote and things of that nature. And being a part of that group and the opportunity part of the group, I think, is significant. It's a way for seniors to express themselves.
Well, we're very excited about the growing number of AARP volunteers in the greater Spokane area. We're very grateful to the Spokane chapter. And I thought maybe we would close out this conversation. Each of you have really made a commitment to civic engagement. And just wondering where that stems from.
I was raised in poverty. The village educated me when my parents didn't have all the equipment. It was the Boy Scouts, it was the church. Children's Hospital saved my life. Stanford University gave me a scholarship. And I think one of the roots I have in public service is to return that gift that was given to me, because it changed our lives. It was an empowerment in a way that I wish more community would do. That opportunity continues to be strong, and I've never forgotten what people have given to me. Mm-hmm. But a comment was made earlier about the fact that you get more out of what you give than what you get. Yes. And it's a feeling that it's a satisfaction that when you can make a difference in someone's life, whether it's feeding somebody who's poor or the work I'm doing in housing, trying to keep people in their homes. It's what God called grace. It becomes a part of your life. It's very special.
My father was a World War II vet, and he worked for the government in Border Patrol and Immigration Service. My mom was a teacher, and I started volunteering with her when she started in the summer doing Head Start, and they encouraged me to volunteer and give time and service to different organizations. And I have done that throughout my adult life with the Boy Scouts, with the church, with the kids at schools. And since when I moved into my house a couple of years later, I've been very active in the neighborhood council and the community assembly. And I love learning new things and trying to make a positive difference in my community to make it a better place. And that's what drives me.
In my case, I grew up listening to the stories my mom and dad say, because I was in India before I came to United States to pursue the graduate school education. And they were involved in India's independence movement with Mahatma Gandhi. And so the importance of independence and importance of democracy and kind of voicing your opinion and participating in democracy has been my priority. Also, similar to what Steve mentioned, when we were in Michigan, we had a family experience, where We had lots of health challenges with one of our family member, and community and educators and therapists and rehab staff gave us a lot. And so when we moved from Michigan to Washington State, I made it my priority to be involved in giving back to the community at any level I can.
And we have fun, too. I mean, we get to go to movies. We get to eat. Today we were in a project of getting out the vote. And we had wonderful cookies. So we have fun, too. We laugh. We at our chapter meetings, we have somebody get up and tell a joke every year, every meeting. And just the fellowship that is involved. So when we're not serving the community, we have fun. That's
meeting new people.
Yeah.
And kind of, one thing, more and more emphasis is on addressing the isolation and loneliness. This gives us an opportunity to form new relationships and learn new things and move forward in our own life's journey.
It's fellowship.
Well, I will say it's about building community. And what I would say to our viewers is that if you too want to join this fun group of volunteers and also to learn more about voting, caregiving, or Social Security, please go to www.aarp.org/WA. And that will lead you to resources and links around voting, caregiving, and Social Security. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
You.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.